Hello, here's another Houdini tutorial, and thank you to everyone that subscribed and liked my videos. I'll keep making more of these. So here's just a very simple geometry that works with dynamics, has some collision geometry, and is just a good way to add detail to your scene. So I'm going to just go through it from scratch. Just turn that off here and let's do it together. So I'm going to add a geometry node here as we just start, and inside here we're just going to use the test geometry, and whichever one you want to pick will work. I'll pick the rubber toy. I just want to test here because I just like to draw on top of a surface as a starting point for a cable, because it's nice to just have it follow like some kind of surface that's in your scene. So to demonstrate, we'll just use this guy here. You could use draw curve to draw a curve on top of him, but I'm gonna just use a topo build because I just want to place points. I don't really want to worry about drawing an actual edge, and I'll just show you that. So with the topo build displayed on, you'll just plug this into the reference or template geometry slot, and make sure to template this so you can see what you're drawing on. And then if you don't want to see this in wireframe, you could press D on your display options, and then here you could choose the display options for template model geometry, and you could pick smooth shaded here. So now my templates will be had this kind of ghosted look. So on the topo build, I'm just gonna make sure this is checked here, and this one up here, which just lets you draw polygons. So I'm just gonna draw on top of the surface. Just like that, and I pressed Q when I finished. And then I just want to get rid of these polygons and just connect the points that I just made. So I'm just going to add an add node here. And inside this add node, we're going to delete geometry but keep the points. And in polygon, we're just going to click by group. And all points is default, so it should just create a line for you on the points you've made. I'm just going to use that as my starting point. So now we no longer need the test geometry. We could unflag that. We could even detach that. It doesn't really matter anymore. It only matters if you want to move these lines, then you'll need to plug that back into template. But I'll just leave it here for now. Now we want to smooth this out a bit, so we're going to add a resample node. And here what we want to do is change this treat polygon as to subdivision curves, which kind of smooths it out. And I'll turn on display points so you can kind of see how many we have, and I'm just gonna change the length to 0.05 just to add a bit more points, just to get more fidelity there. And since we're gonna want to simulate this, we're gonna add a node that's a volume constraint. This is kind of the basic setup for your volumes in Houdini, and this just plugs into there. And in here we're gonna modify this again, but for now we're gonna just look at the thickness here, and we're gonna set it to set uniform. And also we're gonna click visualize thickness, and you should see this little orbs around the vertices, which shows you the thickness of the simulation of this cable. If you don't see that after clicking visualize thickness, make sure this is checked, because this will enable that display in your viewport. Then here, as you can see, if you play, it's not going to simulate anything because this is just a setup. Actually, one more thing I almost forgot is we have to change this type to constraint type. We should change it to string, because that's what we're doing. We're going to simulate a string. And then here, to do the simulation, we need a solver, like anything in Houdini. So we're going to add a volume solver node like this. And you can see it has 2 required connection points. And that's just these 2 here, constraint geometry and the volume logic part goes in here. So now, if you click on that and we play, you can see it falls down because there's gravity by default. And here we could simply, actually we could go back to our volume constraint, and just to make it easier to visualize, we could go down to pin to animation, and we could, and under pin points we could simply just select, click here to select. Let's just select a few points that are pinned and will not move in the simulation. So I'm going to select just these ones. You could pick any ones that you want. Now when we play the simulation, you can see it'll just stick, those points will stick and the rest will be affected by gravity. Like so. So we got our little simulation there. Now we're going to actually give it the shape that you saw earlier. So we're going to add a resample node again, because we want this shape to be a lot more detailed than what was used in the simulation. So in here, we're also going to pick subdivision curves here, and in the length we're going to go 0.001. This adds a silly amount of points. Originally I didn't add this many, but after getting the shape I really wanted, I went back and lowered this to this amount. If your computer's slower, do a little more, or make it a little, sorry, do a little less points, but make this a little higher. Let's go higher for now. We'll adjust it later. We'll just go 0.005. And then here, we're going to add an attribute delete node. That's because the volumes simulation things have a tendency to add a lot of extra information here, and we don't want that. So the easiest way to get rid of that, attribute delete. Inside here, we're just gonna worry about point attributes and put an asterisk here to delete everything. So after that, we're just gonna add a sweep node to make our little shape. And we plug that in, and by default nothing happens because it's missing. It's going to complain that it's missing cross-section geometry, but inside here there's a nice little option. Instead of second input, you could put round tube under the surface shape, and we're going to go 0.01 for the size of this one. And I'm going to turn off points so that display points so that we don't see too much clutter here. And you could add more segments here. Let's do 12 for that. And what's important here is also in UV attributes you need to compute UVs, because we're going to use that. And here we're going to add a UV quick shade node, and then just display that, and you should be able to see the UVs kind of following the spline, so that means you did it correctly. You can delete this after, it's just for helping us display. So, and then here we're going to add attribute promote node, and the reason we're going to do is because the UVs get applied when you apply UVs here, they get applied to the vertex kind of group instead of points. And what we're going to do later is requires it to be in points. So you'll understand more later, but we're going to have to promote the groups to points. So here in attribute point, we're going to pick the name as UV because we want our UVs promoted, and original class will be vertex. And that's just the way Houdini works with UVs. It works on a vertex class. So we want that in points. Then we're just gonna select these three. Holding Alt, you could just drag that over and you will duplicate it. And here we're gonna, everything will be the same except for the sweep node. We're gonna click that. And under surface, we're gonna make the radius bigger. So this is the kind of result you want, where this one is thicker and this one's thinner. And when you play, your simulation still works. Excellent. And now to make our shape, we're just gonna blend these two position values because both of these have the same exact point count, and the points are, if you look at the numbers, they're generally in the same location. This is why this will work quite well. And they should all be in the same location because we didn't do anything here that changes that. So to blend between these two positions, we're gonna create an attribute VOP, this guy right here. And we could plug this into the first input, plug this into the second input here, and display like that. And you'll see nothing happens. You're just gonna see the same as this one here. And that's fine because we have to double click to do things inside here. And if you haven't used VOPs before, this may be complicated, but it gets very simple quite quickly when you use it. I definitely recommend doing a lot of tutorials on this. It's super handy to have. So right now, the way this will work is everything from output 1 and up will be kind of the geometry that's plugged into here. The geometry that's plugged into here will come in as in output 2. So for example, if we drag position to position here, we will get nothing changed because you'll just get the position here being copied over. If we take output 2 and drag to here, it will error out because this is not a position value, it's just everything that is getting plugged in here. Where here it already spread it out for you as like P for position. So to import position from output 2, we just have to add import point attribute little node thing. And by default, you'll see the attribute that it's looking for is P with a capital. That's Houdini's position attribute. So if we plug this into output 2 and we plug in the result to your P, you'll see you'll get the bigger spline because we're getting the position from output 2. And then if you do this one, you'll see the smaller spline. So now, to make our shape, we want to just mix these two values and use our UVs to do so. And the reason we promoted this to points for our UVs is because the attribute VOP, if you click here, it's working over points. And I just like to work with that. So inside here, we're going to add a mix node so that we could mix these two position values. So this position goes into input 1, this one input 2, and the blend result will go into P. So now if you click here, if you move this slider, you can see it's going from big to small, depending how much you blend it. And by default, it's at 0.5, so you're getting in the middle of the two. So now we want to blend it in a bit of a more complicated way. And we're going to use a ramps node. And we're going to use this with the UVs. So UV to U here. And we're going to put that into the bias, which the bias is the blend amount. And then frequency we could increase here, but as you can see, it's kind of picking a different direction than what I want. And the reason that is because UVs are in in vector means they have 3 coordinates like x, y, z or u, v, w, and it's getting plugged into a value that's just u, that's just a float. So what we want to do to control which one of these 3 uv values go into one of these, we have to add a vector to float. And this will just take the vector and split it into like the x, y, z or u, v, w, the 3 float values that are inside a vector value. And we take this middle one into here, and that is what we wanted to make our shape. And inside here, we're gonna click mirrored ramp. And this is why I wanted a bit more detail on my spline. So if we go back to Geo and we go up to this resample, we could change this length to 0.01 because I wanted a bit more detail. And as you can see, it's very like kind of sharp, which I found like hoses may not quite do that, or you may not want that. So let's control that a bit. So inside the attribute VOP, let's move these around so it's a little easier to see. So as you can see, that this is our 2 position values, this one and this P here getting mixed, and this is what's controlling how they mix it by this ramp. So to smooth out these edges, we could add just a clamp node. So I'm going to do that, clamp. And clamp will just clamp the value, the min and max, so that it doesn't go over 1 and doesn't go over 0. Our ramp value is between 0 and 1 already, so that's why you don't see anything happen. But if on this clamp we start lowering the max, you'll see that our peaks are being clamped down. And we could do the same with minimum, we could raise that, and our 0 value is being clamped up. So just play that till you're happy with it, like so, and we could go back here, we could just delete our UV quick shades. We don't need those right now. And that's the shape we got with what we were doing with. So assuming you're happy with it, the next step will be just making sure you're happy with the overall shape. And that'll depend on your scene. So actually before we did that, our thickness was not set, so it could start pinching a bit here. The way we could get our thickness to match our real thickness of our geometry is on one of these sweep nodes, the one that's thicker. This is 0.01, this one's 0.02, so we're going to take this one. We're going to right click and copy parameter, and up into our volume constraint here. Right here we could, in our thickness tab, we could select that and go paste relative reference. So now the thickness will be the same as in our sweep node for our simulation. So now it should give a more accurate kind of thing. And you could play with stiffness in different settings in the volume too if you don't want it to be too sharp of an edge. But that'll be for you to play around with. And let's say you wanted some collision geometry instead of using these pinpoints. So we're just gonna delete these for now. And then all you have to do is just plug into this spot here, collision geometry, which makes it really easy. I like how easy Houdini makes this right now. So we could add a grid. In here, let's add a group node. Actually, sorry, let's just add a merge node. And we could put this grid into here and this into our collision geometry. And you can see right away I think it's not working quite well so far. Hold on. here. Oh, I think I know why it's not working. We need to plug this collision geometry down to the solver because I was not having that go in. Yeah, so now you can see it works with the geometry. So we could put our grid back here. And now we play our simulation. It's working, and now you could go back to the end where you have your final shape, and we could play the simulation, and it kind of works. And you could also pin points just like we did before. Let's say you want to pin some on this side. Let's run the simulation again, and they're also pinned. And this is just if you're doing an environment, it'll be a really quick way to put a lot of detail in your scene. And it's really not scary. Houdini makes simulations very easy. No shelf tools were used, and it's just these two nodes and mostly default settings, and you get this result. So yeah, that's it for the tutorial. If you want to challenge yourself, try to add more different types of cables coming out, maybe ones that also stick with the simulation, and just see what you can do with it. Thank you for watching, and please comment below if you have any suggestions or if you want to share what you did. And thank you for watching. Take care.